don't know. What am I saying? Oh God. Hey friends. Today I'm going to be doing my eyes on camera while I talk about weight loss surgery. So the palette that I'm going to use is this one here from Beauty Bay. This is the Book of Shadows, and it has such a pretty color story. I think I'm going to be playing with the teals and the blues today, but I might throw some purple under my lower lash line as well. Haven't really thought it out. We will see as it goes along. But what I want to focus on today are the negative side effects of gastric bypass surgery. I have spoken at length about all the positive sides of it, but now I want to get like real and talk about some of the downsides of it. Before we get to that though, I want to welcome you back to my channel, or if you are new here, then welcome. My name is Kara. I am a 40-year-old professional and a mother of 2, and makeup is my escape. It's my happy place. It sets my heart on fire. For a little bit of background information about me, I underwent gastric bypass surgery at the end of August in 2019. I have now lost 120 pounds. I've been rather stagnant over the last 2 to 3 months, but I'm not sweating it because I'm not gaining. I'm just not losing right now. I'm in a bit of a stall. That's okay. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about like the immediate side effects, you know, like the day after surgery and how you feel and things like that. I have other videos talking about that. I have a whole playlist of my gastric bypass surgery videos, so I will throw a card up so that if you do want to see more, you can head on over there and see what I've got going on. This video is not meant to scare anybody off, but it's really just to talk about what the reality of life after gastric bypass surgery is, bearing in mind that everybody is going to have different experiences. I have been lucky in that I haven't had any truly terrible side effects. Like I didn't have any strictures or anything like that. I didn't need any sort of corrective secondary surgery. I never had any of those issues. But I certainly have had other side effects and some rather common side effects as well. So I just kind of want to put them on your radar again without sort of scaring you off. So the first and the major one is dumping syndrome. Basically, there's 2 forms of dumping syndrome. There's early and there's late. And I actually looked it up so that I could be really specific about this. So I'm reading from the rochester.edu website. So it says with early, it happens 10 to 30 minutes after a meal. And what does it say in here? It can occur because of the dense mass of food that gets dumped into your small intestine at an earlier stage of digestion. As a result, your intestines become full and bloated, and diarrhea can often occur 30 to 60 minutes later. And then your heart rate can be affected as well as your blood pressure, and it can lead to dizziness. So late dumping syndrome can happen about an hour to 3 hours after a meal, and particularly if the meal has a lot of sugar in it, whether it's fructose or like table sugar. And basically what happens is you get a spike in insulin, and as a result your blood sugar comes crashing down, and then you can have like a racing heart and all of this kind of thing as well. So it says in here, symptoms of dumping syndrome. So most people are going to experience early dumping syndrome, and the symptoms are bloating, sweating, abdominal cramps, facial flushing, an urge to lie down after a meal, heart palpitations, dizziness, diarrhea, things like that. It's super fun. Definitely the urge to lie down after a meal has happened to me, particularly if my stomach just doesn't agree with whatever I'm eating, and sometimes that's a moving target. Sometimes, for example, my body is totally fine with chicken, and then other times, not so much, and it lets me know very quickly, and that would be the early dumping syndrome. With the late dumping syndrome, it says 1 in 4 people have this. I am one of those 1 in 4. I have experienced this, and the symptoms include heart palpitations, sweating, hunger, fatigue, tremors, and fainting. So this happens to me one of 2 ways. So sometimes it is after I've eaten a meal that is higher in carbs and I shouldn't have eaten it, and I'm learning not to now because I never did have this issue until probably within the last month or so. And then I start shaking and sweat like literally drips off my face. my heart is racing. I feel like I can't quite catch my breath, and I feel very weak and dizzy. It's very unpleasant, and it can also happen if I don't eat at all. So kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. So it just comes down to, for me, becoming very aware of what it is that I'm eating and really keeping an eye on the sugar content of what I'm ingesting, including carbs. So that one is probably the least enjoyable side effect that I've had, because it doesn't always come with a warning, and it's very unpleasant, and it can be very scary. Like when you are feeling like you're about to faint, it can be very scary. So when my blood sugar does go low, I usually have like some crackers or something like that, just to get it back up and stabilize it a bit, and then the tremors stop and my heart rate goes back to normal and I feel much better. Usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes or so, but I also have to be cautious not to overcompensate and eat too much sugar and then just perpetuate the cycle. When it's really annoying is when it happens like when I've been asleep. So if I've had like a late meal or something like that, and then I will wake up in the middle of the night and I am drenched in sweat and I'm shaking and I just feel like the world is tilting on me, like it's not pleasant at all. Another side effect that deals with the aftermath of eating, and I'm just going to put a quick trigger warning right here. I am going to be talking about vomit. Not in graphic detail, but if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, just like don't listen to this part. But you get really used to throwing up very quickly. And it's a really weird sensation because it's not like you're super nauseous, it's just that your body needs to make room. At least that's how I experience it. It doesn't feel like I have the flu or anything like that. I don't actually feel sick to my stomach. It's just my body needs to purge itself, basically. And oddly enough, what usually happens is just if I drink with my meal, which they tell you not to, and I'm not good at following that rule, I will own that. I'm not good at it, but then I pay the consequence. So again, it's like, get it through your head and just do it. If I drink with my meal or if I have like a broth-based soup, it's the liquid that comes up. Everything else kind of stays in place, but only the liquid comes up. I can't explain it, but there it is. It doesn't happen all the time, but I would say at least every other day I am sick to my stomach at some point. Not sick to my stomach, but I vomit. I'm trying to use a colloquialism. I don't feel sick, it happens, and then it passes and I'm fine. But just be aware that that is a very common side effect. Okay, while we're talking bodily functions, why don't we get into the really embarrassing stuff, and that would be flatulence. You're gonna stink probably for the rest of your life. Like, you could clear a room and peel paint off the walls. Super attractive. It's fantastic. And you cannot escape it. So I'm sure I'm not alone in here. When you have to do this and there might be somebody else around, if you like kind of like press down really hard into the cushion and hope that it absorbs everything, most times that works and nobody else is any the wiser. Not so much after gastric bypass. It does not matter unless you actually fart into a black hole. Everybody's going to smell it and it's awful. It's awful and it's embarrassing and I kind of hate it, but you know what? It is what it is. Like, it is what it is. It's because the food doesn't digest the way that it normally does, and so the bacteria don't get to break it down as much, and so it's basically just like rotting food sitting in your body until it's expelled, and it smells awful. There it is. I can't sugarcoat it. It is what it is. And also, especially early on, like especially I would say the first 6 to 7 months after surgery, don't trust any fart. And you know what? It's just kind of a standing rule at this point. I just don't trust them still. but especially then. Like, what I mean by that is that it's not always air. And after you have crapped your pants in the parking lot of the grocery store, you learn pretty quickly not to trust them. Speaking from experience. Yeah, it is unpleasant, truly. And also, while your body is still like not understanding how to absorb stuff, I would highly recommend avoiding really high fat foods, butter, oil, all that kind of stuff, because you will see it again. It will ruin your pants. I promise. And I mean, once you ruin pants, you have to replace them, but let's be honest, you have to replace your clothes anyways, because you're going to lose sizes. And so it can become very expensive. So that is something to take into consideration and to sort of budget in advance and have a game plan of what it is that you're going to do. Are you going to go to thrift stores? Are you going to just buy all new wardrobes as you decrease sizes? I mean, everybody has their own budget for this kind of thing. I would recommend not replacing like everything in a full size, because at some point you're gonna fly through some sizes. Like, just, it's true. That's going to be up to your individual budget and your individual sense of style and all that kind of thing, but I would resist the urge of buying all sorts of new clothes as you hit each new size, because for at least the first year, you're not going to be in them for very long. As well, oddly enough, your feet are going to change, or at least mine did. I noticed that this summer. I was walking and I had Birkenstock sandals, but like with like the thong Birkenstock sandals. I don't know how to describe them. They're not like the straps. It doesn't matter. There's a strap across the top of my foot and then one that goes, it's like a T-bar. It doesn't matter. Anyways, they kept falling off my feet and I was like, what is going on? And I had to tighten them up, and then like 3 weeks later I had to tighten them up again. So they are now at their tightest setting because I've lost weight across the top of my foot as well, which I never really considered that would be a thing. Thankfully, my actual foot size, like the size 10 that I wear, I don't have to go down to like a size 9 or anything, so I don't have to replace my shoes, but I have had to tighten them all up. I've also mentioned this before, but I now wear my wedding rings on my right hand because they are way too big for on my left. And even at that, like, I have to be really careful when I wash my hands, because once it gets wet, they slide right off. And I'm terrified they're going to go down the drain one day. And I'm going to have to go and get them sized at some point. But because I am working on roughly the last 30 pounds until I hit my own self-imposed goal, I'm trying to hold off as long as I can, just in case there is any additional change in my hands. I don't want to have them sized twice, but that's an additional cost that I hadn't really thought about happening. I don't know why it never occurred to me. It just didn't. But that is definitely different. This bracelet, you can see how far up it is. When I first got it, I had to add extra links so that it would actually do up around my wrist. And now it's like, you can see, way too big. So I'm going to have to take 1 or 2 of those links off. So there's a lot of changes in that regard. I find even my glasses fit me differently, because my face used to be so much wider because there was more to it. And now my glasses look different on me. So there's a lot of changes that I just never really considered. So just be aware that you might have to invest in replacing a fair amount of your belongings in order to accommodate your new body. Now, there are other changes physically as well, including hair loss. Now, this one did not come as a surprise to me because I have heard it mentioned so many times in these kind of videos. But what I never really accounted for was that hair growing back in, and my God, did it ruin my life. Not really. So I had lost a lot of hair, but because I have so much, I never really noticed how much had come out. Like, I saw it in the drain and all this kind of thing, and it was literally handfuls every time I took a shower. Like, it was terrible. But I still just never clicked in terms of just what that really meant for what was going on in my head until it started growing back. And just recently I went to my hairdresser and was like, just shave it. Just got it all off. I don't care. Because it was so scraggly at the bottom and so damaged but all this, like now what you can see is the ends here, this is all like new growth. So it was super bushy right here and then like scraggly and all like bedraggled at the ends. So hence we've cut it all off, and I'm starting to dig it. I'm still not entirely sure how to style short hair, but we're getting there. We're getting there. It's a lot healthier than it was. Feels one hell of a lot better, and at least there's no more scraggly bits. So there is an easy workaround with that, but I'm grateful that my hair grew back. I have heard some people talk about their hair falling out and they didn't get it back. I don't know what makes the difference for anybody, but mine grew back, so there's that. Vitamin deficiency is another thing to be aware of, though. You will likely be put on a vitamin and supplement regimen, which you're going to have to take for the rest of your life. That's just the way it goes, and it's because the body just doesn't absorb nutrition the way that it used to. And I have admittedly been a little lax in that area for the last couple of months. It's a lot, and it gets a little like overwhelming, but I suspect that osteoporosis probably sucks. So I should just take my damn calcium, because I don't drink milk anymore because, oh, by the way, you often turn lactose intolerant after you have gastric bypass surgery. Thank God I can tolerate some cheese, but I don't drink milk anymore, unless it's soy milk. Now, the last physical side effect that I'll talk about is loose skin and sagging. So I have been pretty darn lucky in that regard. Despite losing over 100 pounds, I don't have a ton of loose skin. What bothers me though are my boobs. I went from basically being an H cup to now being a D to a double D. Kind of like a double D is a little bit too big and a D is a little bit too small, so I'm kind of just riding the wave there between those two. And they are saggy, and they kind of look like deflated balloons. So I feel super attractive about them. My husband assures me that he still loves every inch of me, but I don't like the boobies. Again, once they're in a bra and a shirt's on, like, nobody's gonna know. Nobody's gonna walk up to me and be like,
"Hey, saggy tits, how are you doing?"
Or at least if they do, I don't think I'm the asshole in that situation. Now, there are, of course, emotional side effects, and they're harder to pin down because, again, everybody is going to experience things differently. But for me, food was my crutch. It was an excuse. It was a way to not have to feel things. It was an escape. It was, I don't even know how to describe it. I had a food addiction, for sure. But anytime I was stressed or sad or happy or lonely or anything, it was caused to eat. And clearly that's very unhealthy. But I only underwent a physical surgery. I didn't undergo brain surgery. So those habits still linger in there, and food as a coping mechanism is still latent in my brain. And every now and then I'll have a really stressful day and I'm just like, just want carbs. And then I remember the carbs make me throw up and shake and sweat and do all those horrible things that I don't want to do. So I've had to come up with different coping mechanisms, including running and physical exercise and all that kind of thing. And it's not always easy. I mean, I have to feel the feelings now, right? I have to actually process, oh, I can't talk and do this at the same time. Hold. Okay, eyes are done. So now I can get back to what I was saying, which was basically that I now have to experience all of the emotions that come up throughout daily life. And sometimes that's overwhelming and scary, and I just want to hide in a plate of spaghetti. But no, that's my old life. That is not who I am now. And while I do suffer from anxiety and depression, and I have for years, and I take medication for it and all that kind of thing, losing that crutch of food, it took an adjustment, and it's still taking an adjustment. I've had years upon years upon years of certain mental conditioning of food is your happy place. And now makeup is my happy place, and running is my happy place, and getting out into nature is my happy place. That's what life is now, and I'm so grateful for that. And so while I just sat here and talked about all these negative side effects, and it's not an exhaustive list. I'm sure that there are others that I haven't personally experienced, but I'm also sure that not everybody has experienced the same ones that I have. So, I mean, again, everybody is different. I don't really want the take-home message to be that it's all negative. And if you've watched any of my other videos, I think that comes through. Because regardless of all this, the stinkiest farts known to man, the basically daily vomiting, all of this stuff, I wouldn't trade it to go back to where I was. And so every day, I basically, especially now I'm 15 months out, and you know, it's not as fresh for me. I have, like, the hunger cues have long since returned. My weight loss has slowed down. All of these kind of things. Now it's the challenge phase for me. Now it is taking all of the new habits that I created and trying to just add that much more distance from the old habits that I had. And those old habits don't just completely disappear. So the surgery isn't just a miracle cure. I can slip back into those. I can regain weight. I have to choose not to. So anybody who thinks that this surgery is just the magic fix, it's not. Yes, it leads to rapid weight loss, and yes, it is a tool for that. But ultimately, you have to dedicate yourself to it. And as you're approaching the surgery, I think it's really, really hard to think about that. Because at least for me, if I could have made the changes on my own, I would have. I wouldn't have gone through surgery. I wouldn't have gone through these side effects and all that. But I couldn't make those changes on my own. I just couldn't do it. And that's why this surgery is available. And that's why so many people have this surgery. You know, if you think about it in terms of, like, your heart's not working properly, so you get a pacemaker. That's not the easy way out. That's saving your life. And for me, this surgery literally saved my life. And I have no regrets. Regardless of any of the negative side effects, I have no regrets. I am not convinced that this is the lip color to go with this eye look, but you know what? We've reached a natural ending point for this conversation, so we're going to stick with what we've got. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Thank you all for all of your support and your wonderful comments every time I post videos like this. It really means a lot to me. To the people that reach out to me on email and DMs talking about the surgery that they are going to be having or that they recently have had or whatever the case is, I really appreciate that you reach out and you take that time and that you feel open enough to share with me or ask me questions and all that. I really appreciate that. So thank you for making this a safe space. I remember sitting down to film the very first video that I did, even talking about the surgery, and I was so nervous. I remember I could barely even just look at the camera because I just felt so vulnerable. And you guys have been what have made me feel comfortable enough to talk about my, like, rancid goat farts on the internet. So thank you for that. Also, you're welcome. But I really appreciate that this has been, by and large, very judgment-free. Every now and then people pop into my comments and I don't recognize them, so I know they've just kind of stumbled upon my video. They're not subscribers. And they'll say something that's kind of shitty, and then I'll delete them, and then I move on with my day. Because I'm not going to argue with a stranger on the internet about the merits of gastric bypass surgery. I'm just not. So, anyways, again, thank you for taking the time to watch, and I will see you in my next video. Until then, just be a decent human being. Bye for now.